Cool. Welcome to this week's Substrate Sync. I guess actually, first item is, I think, Niels and Youngchul talking about the definition of breaking changes in the context of deprecations. Yeah. And then I also had actually from last time, I have a doc somewhere I was supposed to write. I have a partial writing for trying to define this like this as well, but I'll let one of you two take it away.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we had a conversation on Slack. We were wondering, based on our voting procedure, we do require 2 votes for breaking changes to the specification. And yeah, we were wondering, since we have deprecation mechanisms, we already had them in protobuf for a long time, but now we also added a mechanism for extensions. What do we consider a breaking change? Is it the moment we declare something deprecated, or when we remove the code at a later point in time that has been deprecated before? And how does that affect the voting process? I think that was
Gotcha. Oh, that's an easier question, I guess. Well, maybe it isn't, but because we're asking it. But I think marking a field as deprecated, that's not the breaking change, because people's code still works. They might get a warning, but that's a them problem if they have it enabled. Removing it is the breaking change.
Yeah, but
unless you treat warnings as errors.
And right. At a certain point, that is a property of how you're managing your code base. And
yeah,
I mean, in the data fusion consumer, we have there's a lot of code comments to the effect of the ignore the deprecation in the protobuf, which is a thing that we do. So like that does pop up, and I guess that is a breaking change, Andrew, but it's also, you can work, like that's an easy workaround in that you uncomment or you make the exception for that specific like deprecation. Because I guess the alternative is we could not do that and then just remove it entirely with no warning, which I guess some people might prefer, but I don't know if it's better.
But just to be clear, I think you're asking about it in the context of voting. And yes. I think if you're going to deprecate something, what we're really voting on is whether or not we want to do this breaking change in the future. So I think from the perspective of voting, it's a breaking change, even though it's literally not a breaking change. Yeah. Because then maybe that's like some backdoor that could be added in the voting process to say, like, when you just do the thing that we all agreed we were going to do anyways, but is the breaking change, maybe that's an easier one to say yes to. But
yeah, exactly. I think the decision to, I mean, it doesn't necessarily be we are actually removing something, but even before that, just declaring it, hey, this is deprecated. I think that requires the community consensus. So in that regard, I think that's basically, hey, are we going to deprecate these functions in the extensions or the proto field? That itself should be the breaking change, or like require basically PMC vote. And then once it is deprecated, then I mean we agreed. Then okay, the change will happen at some point. So that's my take. So I think having the PR that marking something deprecated should require PMC vote. I mean,
I'm on board for that. That seems reasonable.
Yeah. So that's settled then. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we probably would then do a clarification update on the voting process, and that requires 3 votes, I think, if I remember correctly.
Oh, really?
Because
I thought it was 2, but
because it's the governance process.
Step then.
I believe it's 2 for format specification modifications, including breaking extension changes.
Yeah, so if we want to update the governance process with the clarification, how many votes do we need for that?
That's a good point.
Action items. If anyone would like to take that item in the Google Doc, that would be appreciated. Okay, that is the definition, and I guess, Jesus, you have a pull request for top-end support. Oh wait, is this one that we have in the written spec, but not in the? Interesting. I haven't looked at this yet.
I don't know if you just missed it, Jesus, but we're talking about the one that you added, the PR.
You're
I'm
muted.
sorry. I'm having some. Not only I'm muted, I'm having some connection problems. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. I can provide some context if it helps. I think there was some. There was some discussion already thread. Right now in Substrate, there is in the logical level, right? You have the fetch separated from the sort. And there had been already some discussion or proposal, and John Chu was driving that, right? About including sortness into the fetch. There was a little bit of back and forth. There were some discussions. More or less, there was consensus, but it was never pushed. At the same time, in the documentation of Substrate, in the physical operators, there was a top-end variant that was, or operator that was described over there, which basically kind of meets the same purpose of combining into a single operator, though it is in the physical level or defined as a physical operator. For what it's worth, because this is a little bit blurry in Substrate. But basically what this PR is doing is just, hey, this was in the documentation in the site. Let's just add it to the proto as well. It is true that it takes that definition that was in the site, adds the proto, and adds a little bit more the width ties field. On that one, I think we should align between the logical and the physical, right? So we don't end up with a kind of a different way of expressing these semantics. But other than that, it's really following what was already there. So that is that is the proposal or the context. Ben, I think you have your hand up. Yeah.
I'm just curious, and maybe PMCs who have been here longer would know the answer. Is it possible that it once existed and someone got rid of it but forgot to update the documentation, or has the proto for sure never existed? If it once existed and was removed, it would
I don't
probably be
remember any
interesting
removals
context.
of it. I think it's a thing we never added into the protos. I think some of the
Okay.
physical roles don't have a physical equivalence.
Cool.
Yeah, there are a lot of physical rails thrown in like the very initial draft is just sort of a sketch of what this might look like. They didn't have accompanying protobuf.
Okay, I'm going to throw this onto the review queue for this week as well.
Awesome.
Actually, Ben, I'm going to presage because we've got 4 of 5 of us here, I think. This is the PMC bandwidth. I think we're definitely having bandwidth constraints. And actually, before I get into it, just to check something, I think I get paid to work on Substrate. I know Youngchuk gets paid to work on Substrate. I guess Weston or David, are you guys getting paid to work on this stuff anymore? Yeah, okay.
I'm not.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's reasonable. I think Youngchuk and I have been doing a lot of the reviews, and it makes sense because we are financially remunerated for doing so. What I'm trying to figure out is, are there governance changes we can make to reduce the burden on, I guess, all the PMCs actually, really, or like other mechanisms we can do, like, for example, like, okay, we should have a streamlined deprecation process or stuff like that. Yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about with the group. So I think this is definitely, I guess for me, it's like baby's first open source project, and it's like, oh yeah, review bandwidth is the problem and financial compensation and such. But I want to defer it to the group to see if anyone had any ideas.
Yeah, I don't see my review bandwidth increasing for the next several months. So if there were other people that were potential, PMC candidates that could help with review, that might help.
Yeah, I forgot to reply to Victor's email. I'll propose 2 candidates today.
Yeah, like that's one way to do it. I think for myself, I think actually like at least clarifying some of the voting proposals, or even just carving out like, hey, some things don't really require like a full PMC approval, are probably easier as well. Like, and there's a lot of stuff done in the language libraries that works quite well that we could probably bring into the core. But it's also
like
go ahead.
1 PMC plus 3 committers or something is almost 2.
Yeah, how many committers equal 1 PMC? But then also, do we want to have restrictions about company affiliation as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable to have some company, whatever, affiliation rule in place. I mean, I have a full motivation to push like our stuff, but I mean that's not a good thing for the community. So
in general, I don't want to be blocking stuff
Right.
either. I think sometimes I'm just my perspective on it is a combination of anything we add is a thing that we're claiming to support forever. Well, not necessarily because we're still 1.0, so maybe I should be more lenient and say we're allowed to remove things if we add them. But I do worry about the surface area. When the more stuff we add, the more it starts to interact with other parts of the surface area. And there's definitely like a constraint between like, I think this came up in your PR, that's actually on my list of things to talk about later, which is the like, how many function variants do we add to make producers' life easier? But then does it impact consumers? And are there things that like, oh, producers would really like to have one-to-one mappings where it's like, no, it's a producer problem. They should actually have a smarter producer. And there's a lot of tension there that I'm not sure how to resolve sometimes. I think we have a mix of people producing substrate and consuming substrate. And like most things that are, like, I guess, that take discussion, there's no good answer. And maybe we can come up with one. I don't know, but cool. No, yeah, I think clarifying voting proposals, more PMCs, or even, yeah, I think Ben having a like committer to PMC ratio of equivalence would be all ways to do this.
What was your point on some of these things have no good answer, that PMC reviews could be faster if there was sort of less analysis paralysis caused by looking at a PR and saying, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll defer, and just kind of spending like 15 minutes waffling and then not doing anything? Because I've experienced that in the past. I don't know if it's such a great other project. It's like, oh, a lot of my review bandwidth is just spent not wanting to type up a 3-page thing that no one's going to read about what do we want to do about these subtle, like, I mean, or if you just look at it and say, yeah, this makes sense, this fits, it could be a lot faster.
No, that's a good point, and maybe that there's like move slow and carefully, and move fast to break things, which are like the two ends. But maybe we should be more open to, you know what, let's try stuff out, and we'll just be more aggressive with the like deprecation mechanism if we realize like, hey, this actually is not helping. We figured out a better way to do it. And just acknowledging, to your point, Wes, that like I definitely have times where I'm looking at something and being like, I don't know if this is the right way to do it. But also, if spending 6 months trying to think if something is the right way to do it, it's probably not worth the effort of thinking of that versus just trying it and seeing what happens.
Along that idea, like maybe introducing some, say, like alpha or beta, say channel or whatever, but I don't know the word or trendy word. So basically, for like stream a line of features that is in develop, then let's just mark it as a, I don't know, like beta or like working draft. And then they're in the part of the distribution, but it's like, I mean, there's like, it's a still work in progress. So I mean, it's up to. I mean, so basically, it's a working in progress, and we are collecting feedbacks. So, and the review process can be a lot easier because it's a draft. So, I mean, maybe that is another way to approach it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could make sense, right? And actually, that's very, very close to how you do development also, for instance, APIs, interfaces, and so on, right? I mean, sometimes they are not stable. You annotate them in a certain way, and it's clear that the contract is like, hey, you know, things might change. If you take a dependency, you might need to change them, right? Yeah, and that would allow maybe to be a little bit faster on those parts. Yeah.
So,
But what does it really mean to mark something as experimental versus non in this context? Like, we're still going to implement it in all the downstream libraries, and take lambdas, for example. Like, the reason why we were pushing for lambdas is because we need them, and they're going to be very load bearing soon. So, you know, obviously, like, any changes that need to be made to improve the semantics, we're all for, but it necessarily becomes a migration because we have to lean on them.
Right.
so if we
Yes, exactly. I think we want that. Like, we want to be like slacking a little bit, but we want to.
But isn't that what pre 1.0 is? Sorry, yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we treated Substrate like an open standard, like a W3C standard, then you would be in working draft phase for a period of time, and then you'd have a candidate recommendation and a proposed recommendation, and finally a recommendation. Then you move on to the next version as a working draft. But that's quite a slow release cycle.
Right.
But it does allow you to at least be able to break things that you put in because it doesn't work.
I do not want to treat Substrate as a W3 standard. I think you're making the point that that's the other way to do this, but I'm like, yeah, you know what? Please no. But no, Ben does make a good point in that.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, we are pre 1.0, so everything is technically experimental and subject to
review.
I guess the other way to approach this is we sort of have a good idea of what systems are actively integrating with it. So, like, at least for our end, you know, Nils is actively deprecating stuff, getting rid of stuff, which, you know, is good because I think he made the point to, like, oh, this has been gone for a year and a half. No one should be depending on it. That's a great point, Nils. We really should update our internal systems and not be doing that. But I think, like you know, on our end, we're looking at data fusion stuff. So when we make breaking changes, we go fix data fusion and stuff like that. And I think, like, for Spark, I guess in Substrate Java, you're doing that. And I don't know other systems that might be depending on us that might be impacted. I feel like if we're doing an active job of reaching out and knowing who is using us and making the changes proactively for them, I think I'd also be like, yeah, like, we'll make breaking changes, but as a community, we'll go in and, like, hey, we found a better way of doing this. Like, let us help you move towards it. Someone raised their hand and then unraised it.
No, I meant to press mute and press the wrong button. But I was amused by Ben's comment there on version 8 already, which is pretty brave for a spec.
Substrate Go is the language library. The only reason it's post 1.0 is at one point we screwed up conventional commits. There's a Boolean flag you have to toggle so it gets to like 0.9. It doesn't go to 1.0, and we didn't do it. And then we released 1.0, and it was around for too long to get rid of it. Substrate Go is the awkward stepchild, like awkward child of all of the language libraries. I sometimes wonder if I should just release Substrate Go 2 and pre 1.0 again. Anyways. Yeah, that one aside. Cool. I think we've got lots of good ideas. I can try and synthesize some of these.
I mean, another small thing, I mean, with the experimental and things. So this may be, I think, like, for instance, like SQL. SQL has a various anchor points that in the standard, throughout the standard, hey, if a system declares to support these things, so then there's basically some sort of a feature switch. So it's specifically anchor a certain feature with a certain feature switch. So if a system X declare I'm supporting this, then it support like entire scope of that section of the standard or paragraph or whatever. So I mean, I fully agree with Andrew. We really don't want to go like ISO standard thing. we don't, yeah, but some I think we need some more lightweight
Mhm.
thing to do some more faster changes, I think.
And I think if we're all on board for like, you know what, we'll add more stuff, but also we might remove stuff more aggressively. I think that's if I'll send an email out to the community about this. Actually, maybe I'll just summarize like where we're in, what we're thinking of doing, and like yeah, like we might add more stuff, but we might remove more stuff because like you know I think about it sometimes. It's like the fact that sort rel and limit rel are separate causes us all sorts of issues when we start thinking about ties. Maybe we should get rid of those two. maybe sort and limit shouldn't exist. Or sort and fetch shouldn't exist. And I understand now why calcite treats them as one entity for so many reasons. Anyways, Ben, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I feel like this kind of conversation has come up before, and it always leads to a conversation about kind of building up infrastructure around managing what things we're confident about and what things we're not confident about. And maybe I'll regret being the person that proposed this, but maybe it makes sense to just, instead of waiting until we're 99% sure change is good, to wait until we're 95 or whatever the right level is. Like some amount of mistakes is appropriate and most mistakes can be fixed. And like it's a pre 1.0 spec and it's really hard to know what the right way to do things is until it's load bearing. And like we even had a conversation in the last meeting about the what is it, like the segment reference stuff being non-ideal, but that's one of the oldest parts of the spec. And so like now maybe we'll change it. Who knows? You know, that's part of figuring things out. So
yeah. And you know, as I tell you a bunch internally, like, you know, if you're never feel safe making bad changes, then you'll never make them. I think I just need to listen to my own advice there as well. Cool. Yeah, I'll send this out and I'll do this today, actually. This is good. This is also selfishly, it's like, I want to get myself off the hot path so that other people can do cool stuff. Okay, that's good. Ben, I guess you have a PR for, I guess, yeah, Ben's next point. Sorry, any other questions or thoughts on the PMC thing? Or review bandage thing specifically? No, cool. Okay, yeah. Ben, you have...
Wait, sorry. I just, because of the delay, I have a quick question about that. The other part, right, that was the expansion of PMC committership and so on. Just out of curiosity, because I've not been I've not joined this obviously for quite a while, right? But are there any plans also kind of outreach, meaning any talks plan around Substrate, any event people can learn more, that's usually how you also start attracting some additional people and so on. So I'm just curious. If there is a pointer, I can also check, but yeah.
I know, and Niels, I know we've talked about before about the idea of doing some kind of talk. I think it would be a good idea. I just don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had the impression that VLDB was kind of a Substrate meetup almost. Like
which one, right?
VLDB, the Very Large Database Conference. Because Weston, myself, and maybe Andrew, I think you were on, or Matthew, we met at VLDB in London last year. And I think also a lot of the other members from this composable data management systems workshop have had the chance to meet before in the context of VLDB. We will also be at VLDB this year since IBM is one of the sponsors usually.
Can you link the conference? I'm not sure.
Absolutely. It will be in Boston this year. The other thing that I discussed with Victor, which we discussed internally at IBM, so nothing's set in stone, but I can see whether we can push that. IBM has a technical conference also in the US typically, usually in Orlando, also in fall. And we do have a community day there where we invite open source communities. As you may know, we are invested in the Presto, Velox, PyTorch, whatever. We're invested in lots of open source communities. And we have a specific open source day, in a way, community day, where we invite people from the open source community to give talks. And we would be I've heard that we would be open to also invite the Substrate community, because we consider Substrate a strategic open source project for us. So that is another alternative, yeah, that we can discuss if you.
Yeah, we could do a more major thing. I think even just thinking about, you guys, IBM is like all the team is based in Europe. I'm sure that doing something, a small like online event in Europe could work. I know that Youngshul and Jesus are both in Redmond or Bellevue, probably for Microsoft.
I'm in Redmond. Jesus will be in Redmond soon, I guess.
Yes, but I'm in Mountain View right now in California. But yeah,
No, that's
I'll be in
fair.
Redmond.
I mean, we could probably, if we wanted to wrangle like an in-person kind of thing, we could probably do one in Seattle. I live in Seattle. I guess Weston, you're in Tacoma.
Yeah. A little further, Olympia, but close enough I can go to Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that there are a few stakeholders, I mean, because that there would be community together, but knowing that there are quite a few stakeholders from different places, companies using Substrate, I mean, I think there is enough muscle to do a meetup even with different talks on how each group, for instance, companies using Substrate, right, and being careful that we don't overlap too much, but could be interesting, right? Because I think you kind of showcase different use cases and whatnot. So that could be interesting.
Yeah, I think bootstrapping with like not a couple conference, but just a casual meetup at an actual real life office of an actual real company would be a good way to get some stuff online and be like, yes, Microsoft was an actual event for PMCs and Substrate. And probably low bar to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. No, I will add that to be. Yeah, because I think the last time I gave a public talk on Substrate was at the CalSite meetup last year in like February. I don't know if there's been any other public talks since then about stuff here and there. Is Lance using Substrate for anything internally, Weston?
It's an input option for various tasks, so users can insert a substrate, usually for expressions more than plans. Yeah, because we don't really take plans as input anywhere.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's a good idea. Thanks for this. Okay. And now for the next ones, I guess, Ben, you have a clarification of output schema. That's a PR request for just saying that, hey, extension relations should define how to compute their output schemas, right?
Yeah. There's nothing really to talk about. I'm just.
Yeah, I'll put that in the request queue. That one's a very boring, and it's the thing that comes up in practice if you start using custom relations, which is that you have to actually say how you output the schema for the consumer and the producer to be able to use them correctly, or compute the output schema, basically.
And then the second one maybe warrants a tiny little bit of discussion, which is just that I've been trying to add some functions to the core Substrate catalog, but it just turns out that it's like a lot harder than I expected to cover a wide swath of databases. So, for example, I wanted to just add a function to cover the array index operation, but there's so much subtlety in how all of the different engines handle this, between whether they allow negative indices or not, whether or not out of bounds results in null or not, whether or not 0 is a special exception or not. And to cover the reasonable set of databases I first encountered, it required like this crazy 3 option matrix thing. So I altered the proposal to just simplify things quite a bit and just take the perspective of, let's just represent the most basic kind of Postgres-y sort of version of this function. But I guess the discussion I was hoping to have in general was what sort of coverage is a function in the extension catalog expected to have? Is the goal to try and have it cover every single database that's reasonably used across, some meaning of reasonably used, or just to cover some common use case like the Postgres case?
For the sake of, my company.
Not Postgres. I think MySQL server.
So I would say I mean, of course, like definitely, I think we need to go for some very popular semantics like Postgres. Those are like some databases like arguably, I mean, they're just de facto standard. Like a lot of people are using it. We should support those cases, and then the rest are really based on the participation. I mean, if you're, I would say, I mean, if you really want to incorporate your systems, just participate and propose and work with it.
And I guess, go ahead, Nils.
Didn't we in one of the, I think 2 or 3 things back, didn't we also discuss about potentially accepting more extensions into the core Substrait repo, even if they're not officially part of the standard spec, but they are extensions for specific systems.
Yeah, like functions Postgres and stuff like that.
And have like a marketplace of extensions. So I think it could also be a component. So I would argue that in the core of the Substrait spec, we want to have a good coverage of common operations. But then also, I mean, that's why Substrait has the extensibility. I mean, it's totally fine to extend Substrate with specific operations. And then in order to help communicate what specific operations exist, we can have like a marketplace of extensions. And
the trick with the one caveat with that is if you do start to end up with the anti-pattern of everyone uses their system-specific marketplace extension, and then there's no interop. But that said, the thing that has worked for us a bit internally is that having a marketplace, or even just having like, you know what, we've got extensions for Trino stuff, for Postgres stuff, for Snowflake stuff, for MySQL stuff, where it's like having a bunch of like, people have added these functionalities. What is the actual core component of these that we could extract as a unified thing? And then use the deprecation mechanism to be like, hey, we added these to Trino for Postgres, but actually these should all be this core function that we should implement and use that instead. So it's a good place to add things for us to promote to first-class entities, if that makes sense, where we could actually like that idea. Speaking of like moving more quickly, it's like, you know what, let's do the thing that we know. Like if people add too many things to functions Postgres, if they don't support it, it's a problem, but it gives us a place to like, oh, wait, Postgres and MySQL and Snowflake, and these are all the same, these are all versions of the same function, maybe with like an enum argument and an option added. And then we can reduce the burden in like the end turn via a breaking change. But I guess to your point, Ben, like, yeah, when I'm thinking about adding functions to the core, I guess the criteria that I have as well are, what is like the more fundamental behavior over which you can add other behaviors. So for example, if some systems throw an exception on like out of bounds and some throw null, if you have a function that returns null, that you can then use like, hey, if null throw kind of composition on it. Versus if you throw, you can't do the other way around. Like, what are the more primitive ones that you can use to build a more specific behavior? And that also comes up in the discussion. I was going to add actually, where Nils was talking about looking at adding variance and standard deviation variant for functions that take integer-specific arguments. So for right now, for example, we have a variance function that takes FP32 and outputs FP32, and one that takes FP64 and outputs FP64. We don't have like integer options for like I8, I16. And the question there is like, are those actual primitives that should exist in the functions, or should we be telling producers to cast those input types? And like, that's one of those tensions between producer and consumer where like this also comes up in like add functions, where we don't let you add like an I32 and an FP32. We say you have to cast one of these, and that's how you encapsulate as the producer the specific semantic coercion behavior of your system. That's go ahead, Ben.
Just I think that what Young Chol said speaks to me a little bit too, which is just like, I should cover the behaviors that are reasonable for my use cases and lean on the reviewers to make sure that it covers their use cases. And there's really no need to cover the use case of a database, which no one is looking to represent Substrate queries for, and just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think this is open source project and require participations, and I really, this is like one way to incentivize the participation. If you want to get your stuff in, like, do participate community activities and contribute.
I agree. Yeah. Okay, that makes the world simpler. So for me
Yeah.
at least.
Cool.
By the way, I'm
Thanks.
open source newbie, so
This is my first open source project, so
Yeah.
it's been fun and a wild ride. And we're having what I could only describe as cool. People are using our stuff problems, which is like the kind of problems you want to have. It's like too many people want to contribute. Okay, that's better than no one's looking at this. It's a victim of success. Youngshul, yeah, out of reference proposal. This is definitely one of those for me that was like, okay, I don't know what the right answer for this is.
Yeah. So I created an issue because I think the example Slack, we talked about like Slack last time, but
GitHub is better because Slack will forget. And oh, cool, there's a
it's
big
forgotten.
diagram
And
now.
it's a the 1 second. So I put the link there. So there's a example. I put some mermaid diagram. Maybe I should present the 1 second. Present the screen. By the way, this issue got a really cool number, 1K.
1024.
Yeah.
I can also share it if you want, Youngshul.
Yeah. Could you? Yeah.
There's a non-show chance asking for like permissions for something. People see the tab. There we go.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I lost my window. Where is it? Ah, there you go. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, I mean, my windows are all dark theme, so it's refreshing to see the white background. Okay, so the problem is like a current substrate autoreference model is based on the relative offset based. So you at the root so field reference has structure with basically where is your anchor point, and then within that anchor point, how are you going to access the field there? So this, and for the autoreference, you need to basically walk up the tree and then figure out like which schema or which rel you are binding to access to resolve this like field reference. So that's like, so I'm just, this thing is just for the sake of demonstration, I created some very ugly SQL text and then created some straightforward substrate well graph, and then apply simple predicate pushdown to just illustrate the problem here. So after this like crazy common sub expressions with the nested retro joins, and then you apply filter pushdown, then suddenly you have this predicate, which is including the autoreference, needs to traverse up the tree all the way to the retro join one. However, there are like multiple passes along the way. So the number of lateral join or the scalar subquery boundary you are crossing, you're adding the incrementing like depth 1, but there can be vary. I initially the current PR. There's a PR that I proposed earlier, which is actually a little more generic than this, but the core is really, in that PR, I was actually talking about, this field reference can be different, but in fact, the autoreference, just the autoreference alone, it is just the depths, the steps matters, because once you figure out the one point, I mean, that point is producing the value that the autoreference is referring to. So the field offset doesn't change, but the steps can change. So yeah, so this is the problem. You can chew on it later after this meeting. So there are the quick two solution to that is basically the one is like introducing some sort of like ID. This is my preferred solution, because once you name these points, like lateral joints or anywhere. Give some like ID, and then okay, now this ID will be basically the new root in the field reference. And then you can just directly go, okay, here's a schema for that one. And then you can just access the field there and fish out the value. So that's the proposal. And then of course, like, yeah, I mean, this is really how you resolve the path, basically. Like how are you going to get there? How are you going to get the anchor point? So another like way is like, okay, let's just spell out like how are you going to address or follow the path in this situation. So one easy way would be, okay, let's just follow the leftmost DFS order. So you're just passing, looking for the shortest path to the thing. I don't really like this thing because yeah, Jesus, yes.
Yeah, but just to also mention, and maybe Victor and others are already aware, but correlation ID is also something that is already present, for instance, in Calcite. So it's not kind of an obscure, concept what you are suggesting there. If I remember correctly, yeah, the ID itself, yeah, it has some unique identifier. I do think there was some name, but I think it's mostly for visualization, whatever, debuggability purposes. But yeah, just wanted to mention that correlation ID, although it seems like more disruptive, right, in terms of proposal, it's already something that, for instance, in Calcite is done. So
yeah,
maybe it's a good option.
I mean, the thing I might add is I feel like I'm getting more and more in favor of adding IDs to nodes in general, not just for correlation stuff,
right.
but
Yeah,
or more precisely, every time I look at the steps out thing in any of the code bases, I want to rip my hair out because I'm just like, this is so hard to reason about. If we could pin things to like IDs on the nodes, then it feels like an easier encoding for producers and consumers to lower into whatever they're actually doing.
Yeah,
I'm sure that if we tried to do something like this, I will eventually run into a system that it doesn't work for. But like the steps out thing, the nice thing of the steps out thing is it does limit the like cycles potential for something like this, where once you start to get correlation IDs, you can't start to have like subtrees referencing other subtrees in like weird ways, and you do open yourself up to like fun cycle things. But maybe that's what we need to actually represent things like recursive pseudo-queries as well. And, maybe that is just a thing that exists in the world and we should.
Yes. In fact, this ID thing is better be unique because potentially like every scalar expressions can have subquery. So the project can have subquery. So if you do that, then and you follow this new scheme, then project rail should have the correlation ID. And then then this becomes, okay, now this thing, where should I put this? Like project rail and then maybe join rail. Like, but what about filter? And what about the others? Then it quickly becomes like rail ID, essentially.
Yeah, it's what we're talking about. It's like
a
more generic version of correlation ID is just having an optional rail ID that is unique per plan that gives you a place to put attached, like, hey, I want to do something with this node specifically.
Right. And another like defense, or say advocate of this is like there's another example already, I believe, about the Bloom filter or saved computation thing.
Yeah,
is introducing the ID in the save point and then load actually refer that ID. Yeah, it is not like core things, but it's a hint or optimizations, but it's already in there in Substrate. So let's continue to discuss this in the issue. I'll also revise the outstanding PR with respect to this issue. Let's continue to discuss in offline. And
to think Ben was the one saying that, like, the steps out thing, every time we were like, maybe if we're going to be breaking things, we should break it. And I feel like having a relation level ID to do steps out stuff in might be the thing that we need to actually move towards to remove this, like remove the steps out stuff. That's, yeah, it's very hard to reason about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
deprecate it first and then remove it.
Yes, it is. Well, first have the alternative and be like, yeah, you can encode this using the alternative.
Yes,
Like, hey,
yes,
you have
yes.
a reference to a relation and a field in that relation,
yeah,
or an output in that relation. Yeah.
Yeah. Old thing is deprecated, new thing is not ready. Yeah, let's avoid that.
I was having Ben review the deprecation thing I was writing, but the TLDR of it was like, if we're going to do breaking changes, we should treat them as migrations. People are actively depending on Substrate stuff running across multiple systems, so they can't do atomic changes. So give them, not a year and a half. That's on us, but 2 months to 3 months to actually move their stuff. Cool. Yeah. Okay, that's good. And then I guess the Unity representation thing, that's actually just a question for Young Troll that we can chat about in that PR. You did a +0 on the string.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that means, but I don't want to.
Oh, yeah. Basically, I'm okay with the PR in general, but just that like representation of unsigned integer as a just decimal string is something I don't like, but I'm okay with the PR. So that's.
I actually agree. What I would like to do, like thinking about it, is I want to use like integer numeric, like assigned numeric types for the struct representation, and then string types for the test representation. That's actually the thing I want, because I think for context, like this is we're adding support for unsigned integers into the spec as an extension, and we added tests for them. But then when you add tests, you need to define how do you parse the values in the test for user-defined types. It's like we can piggyback off the struct mechanism. But if we do that, it's like I want to test like the edge case values and being like, oh, the I8 of negative, oh God, now I can't remember. The tests are more readable if we use string encodings, because then you can actually put the value you need and not like, oh, I want this unsigned value, but it's like -1 is like max. I can't how numbers work. But on the encoding side, if you're actually using the system, like in most cases, you just want to be like, take my unsigned integer and just put it into a signed int and send it over to the protobuf, and then the other side decode it as an unsigned.
Yeah.
No, I think Young Troll. I guess for that one, I'll take a look at that. I think we can split the test representation from the official struct representation.
Sure. Yeah.
Just I remember we discussed this earlier today, Victor, and I said that there was a thread in that PR talking about this, and I just found it and sent it. Which I now see, Young Troll, you switched from +0.5 to +0 on the string
really?
representation.
Means like, I the second look, clearly I really don't like it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think don't wait longer or it will become -0.5 or something. So
No, but this is one of those cases, like, well, I agree with Young Troll here. Actually, like thinking about it, I don't like that as the encoding for the systems. That's the problem. Is that he went from 0.5 to 0, and I agree with him. No, that's good. I think we're close to time. Any other items for today?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll flush the pending code review, PR review after this meeting. So
cool.
Yeah.
And I'll send an email. If someone wants to make a PR for the governance for deprecation, that'll be good. And then I'll send out an email about the new direction of like more experimental changes, but also more potential breakages. But let's actually try doing stuff. And to Weston's point, I think analysis paralysis is definitely the name of the game, and it's definitely the issue that we're having, where it's hard to tell if we're doing the right thing, but sometimes it's better to just try literally anything. Well, not literally anything. Let's not do bad things. On that note as well, I think Ben noticed that he couldn't merge PRs in Substrate, and I think it's like, wait, no, committers should be able to do it after the 2 approvals. So that's been enabled. Please use your powers with I forgot the word for it. Yeah, be responsible for the powers you have, Ben.
I also just wanted to say this before. I guess we have a couple of minutes left, so I don't have to feel bad. But also in this kind of analysis paralysis conversation, I do think it is also important to differentiate two categories of problems. One is like someone wants to add a new feature and we're unsure if the new feature will interact with things in an unfortunate way. And the other is like something is wrong with the spec as it stands now. And I know I have at least one PR open for that kind of thing. But just like those kinds of things, if there's something broken about the spec, then trying something new is just moving to a different broken state. So it's not even so crazy of a consequence in that sense, you know? It's more just, yeah, I don't know.
Makes sense. Hello, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you in 2
Right.
weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Kill the crane.